Afghanistan wars, and terrorism combined. It should be clear by now that this level of gun violence is a uniquely American problem among the developed world. And here's one reason why. There are a ton of guns in the US. This chart shows the estimated number of guns by country. It's adjusted for population size, and it's still not even close.
The question that I would like to ask is how on earth could he compile 13 guns? How can that happen?
If you take a look back at the 10 countries with the highest levels of human development, you can see that it's relatively really easy to get a gun in the US. All of the other countries require a license to purchase most guns, and those purchases are recorded into an official registry. To get that license, people have to state a reason for why they want a gun. And in most of these countries, they have to pass a safety test and are required by law to store their guns safely. In part because of its lax laws, there are well over 300 million guns in the US, and counting. This chart doesn't reflect private sales, but it shows the number of background checks, which all federally licensed dealers have to run. It suggests that the demand for guns has been increasing steeply since Barack Obama took office. So we've looked at gun deaths and at gun ownership. This chart puts them together. It shows that among highly developed countries, the more guns in a country, the more gun deaths. You can see that countries like Switzerland, which have relatively more guns than a country like the Netherlands, also have a higher gun death rate. And here's the US. Likewise, US states with more guns have more gun homicides. There are outliers like Idaho, which has higher rates of gun ownership but low rates of gun murders. But overall, there's a correlation between gun ownership and homicide rates. And that relationship has held up in studies that control for things like poverty, unemployment, and crime. The correlation between gun ownership and gun deaths is even stronger for suicides. It makes sense. Depression with a gun is more dangerous than depression without one. Likewise, fights, domestic disputes, road rage, drunkenness, all much more dangerous with a gun than without. That said, you might need different policies to keep guns away from potential mass shooters than you would to keep them out of inner city gangs or out of the hands of someone who might hurt themselves. America doesn't have a gun problem. It has several of them.
An AWS certification is...
Well, anyway, that was one. We're going to listen to another one here. Okay.
So how are gun owners and gun enthusiasts feeling about all of the talk of new gun policy? I sat down with a panel of gun owners from Florida, Alabama, Connecticut, Arizona, and New York. 3 of them say they are now having second thoughts about their own weapons in light of the massacre in Parkland, Florida. So here's part 1 of our conversation. How many of you felt after the Parkland shooting that something was going to change, that Parkland was a tipping point? Show of hands. Why did you feel this time was different?
This time because the kids, the children from the school have been so front and center and so active that it just gave a little bit of a different feeling, especially because they're the next generation and they're speaking up. Not that I agree with what they're pushing, but I think the use of social media and the snowball effect from what they've been able to do in this past week is entirely different from any of the previous incidents.
People have had enough. It's really that simple. I think sentiment is changing. I said the first day that there was going to be a tipping point at this point. We've just had enough of this constant carnage. And the question becomes, why do we not do something about it? It's really that simple. Why?
I think that we're having a really hard time focusing in on what the real issues are. And we all want this to stop. And we all want a fix, but the fix isn't banning guns. The fix is much deeper than that.
Well, let's just take a vote right here. How many people would be comfortable with an assault weapons ban? Show of hands. 2 of you. Okay, why not?
I don't think there needs to be a ban. There needs to be modifications to the weapons, limitations to the weapons.
Meaning not high magazine capacity?
Correct. So an AR-15 should not be used as a home protection weapon.
Why not?
Welcome to
Because
1984.
Do you know what a fabulous gun that is for women?
It is a fabulous gun. So is
It is the
a
easiest gun to
shotgun.
shoot.
Yeah, shotgun's actually a much better weapon.
No, but it's much harder to handle. Not
You don't
for
have
a woman.
to. Your accuracy doesn't have to be.
That's
Gary has a
a
great
fallacy too.
And-
That's a
As you
fallacy.
hear a pump-action shotgun go, most people
That's a
leave.
fallacy.
You also don't need home protection. You don't need guns for home protection. The probability that you'll be involved in a gun-related crime is 0.003%.
If I have somebody breaking into my home, I need a means of self-defense. Whether that's a handgun, whether that's an AR-15, that should be my choice. And frankly, I think the law allows that choice.
If they banned AR-15s, you could still defend yourself with your handgun.
I could.
Possibly.
And a shotgun.
You guys are missing the key point
Yeah,
here.
what
This
is
is a Second Amendment right. This
We're
is
not
our
taking away your
the
gun.
AR-15.
Let me finish, please.
Sorry.
Let me finish, please. This is a constitutionally protected right. This is not a government legislated privilege, such as driving a car. This is a completely different
Yep,
conversation.
fair enough. But do you think the forefathers meant the AR-15?
I think they meant our protection against a tyrannical government
Thank you.
and for our self-protection.
So do you
Of
believe
course,
that-
they don't know what the guns are, but if you can't start messing with our constitutionally protected rights
Well,
when
we
you
already
start
have.
doing
There are interpretations, obviously, of what the forefathers meant. I
Right.
mean, you're not actually allowed to have an automatic weapon.
I know why you want them. I know they make a lot of noise, they shoot a lot of bullets, very macho gun, it's cool looking. I understand why they want them. But nobody can tell me why you need it.
We don't have to need it. It's a constitutionally protected right. I don't.
Well, not that.
I don't have
Those
to
kids
need
need it
it.
to live.
Yeah.
Of course they did.
not a
And
But the AR-15 isn't a
protected right.
constitutionally protected, right?
It's no different from any other.
Arms are,
you have the
but
right-
it's not an
You,
AR-15.
you have the
It's
right
an
to
arm.
self-defense, and it's not only a Second Amendment right, you have the right to life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, and that is all about protecting yourself, protecting your family.
And all those kids have the right to life, and they're dead.
You cannot yell fire in a movie theater, even though we have the right to free speech. And we've already decided you cannot have an automatic weapon. All right, so all we're talking about is where the line is.
But the line is for military use, and an AR-15 is not a military rifle. It is a regular semi-automatic rifle that looks badass.
What about a
That's
semi?
what it
What
is.
about a
Your
semi
life
with a bump
change
stock?
any if you didn't own an assault rifle?
Yes.
AR-15. Would your lifestyle change any?
My lifestyle?
Yeah, would it
no,
change?
because there's
That's
other
right.
firearms I would
Exactly.
purchase. But my concern for my country and the protection of our Second Amendment rights would.
So
And that's scary.
At what point will we have to stand up against our government and use lethal force in the year 2000?
It's happening in Venezuela.
Venezuela.
There's a million slippery slope arguments that we can use, but let's try to stay in the present. So here's what's being proposed today, okay? Do you support the end of the sales of bump stocks, making bump stocks illegal? Show of hands. 3 of you. Why would you not support an end to bump stocks that mowed down 58 people from a window?
Well, that's a loaded question.
A gun cannot do anything unless someone is operating it.
Thank you.
It is a tool. And if sick people have a mental issue,
Yeah?
that is them. It's not the gun.
I could do the
It's an
same thing with
Because
my
by law, it's not illegal.
It's an accessory.
It's not considered an automatic weapon when you have a bump stock.
And you know-
Plus, how many times has a bump stock been used in a mass
But
shooting?
why are you comfortable with that? Why are you defending bump stocks?
Because I think it should be available. I think it should
Why?
be available to
For
those
what?
out there because it's not an issue of the gun itself or the weapon itself.
Right.
It's an issue of the individual behind it.
And which individual would want to use a bump stock?
A crazed individual, right?
Why
Who
not
was going
ban
to a
them?
mass shooting.
Why not ban them?
What does that accomplish, though? What are we going
It
with?
keeps those 58 people alive.
Once you start doing that, what's the next accessory?
Right.
Now you're opening up a whole other thing because it's not a firearm.
Let's keep going through what the solutions are. President Trump is proposing arming teachers. Those that are trained and adept, who's comfortable? Arms up.
If they want to, as a
If
volunteer.
they want to, voluntarily.
Voluntarily.
Okay.
Voluntarily.
Why aren't you comfortable with that, Amanda?
I mean, I feel like this shouldn't even need to be explained. I think Mr. Trump is way off the mark on this. You don't want to bring more guns into a situation. The answer to solving violence is not more violence.
You were a teacher
Yeah,
for
the
7 years.
last thing I want is a gun in my classroom. And when you're trying to shoot a shooter that's in the building, you're going to hit kids. Or if the police show up and you're a black teacher holding a gun because you were defending against a shooter, you're going to get shot.
I totally understand what you're saying and that concern, and I know a lot of people have that. You know, but I think we agree we don't want people armed that aren't prepared to do what needs to be done if they have to and don't have the training.
No one can possibly be prepared for a situation where you're
Well, you can train
firing
for it.
gunshots around
You
children.
don't have that right to make that choice for children that are in school when they could be protected by somebody
You don't have the
potentially
right
with
to
a
make the
gun
choice
that
that
has
they might be
training.
caught in crossfire.
You don't have the right
wrong.
to rule over their life
Have
and
you-
say that
have
they
you
didn't
ever
have the opportunity to save those children.
But you're ruling over their lives, saying that we should have AR-15 and allow someone to bring it in.
Incorrect.
For my self-protection or in a classroom, I want anything that's better than what he has. And I want more rounds than whatever he has.
Okay, so here's why a couple of them are so relevant. They're all three of them are rethinking their own gun purchases, but two of them destroyed their guns. So Scott, on the lower left, he's the one whose video went viral. He destroyed his AR-15 because of what he saw in Parkland. So tomorrow, we're going to talk to him about why he decided to do this. Also, the teacher on the right-hand side, the blonde on the lower right, she also destroyed her gun because of Parkland. So we're going to ask what's happened in their lives if they regret doing that.
No, so look, I think that this is a very fair reflection of where people's minds are on this issue. And at the end of the day, it becomes about the political will. There's no question that legally, some of the people there are wrong about what you can do and you can't do legally. Yes, it's a right in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. It can be subject to reasonable regulation. Even Scalia said that, and we have it. If the politicians want to do it, they will be rewarded or punished at the polls. That's the way it should work. Will some of those people be upset? Yes. That's the price of political action.
All right, so part two of our sit-down with gun owners is tomorrow.
Well, that is our couple segments on gun ownership and laws, what other people think about it. And although that was more like a debate than anything, it's something. It's a conversation that needed to take place. There's much more to come right here at www.speakerstudio.com. You can catch me live here. You can catch me on demand. The Alexa device through Amazon, Twitter, Facebook, and iTunes anytime. Or you can just download it, listen to it anytime. Please feel free to be a part of this podcast anytime that we're on the air. You can call in. You can email anytime too at bdhammond45@gmail.com anytime, or you can call in at, the call-in number has changed. We're going to have two different numbers. The first one is going to be 210-237-7055. That's 210-237-7055. On the next show, we'll have more about gun facts, laws, and no, I haven't forgot about the sex trafficking. We do need to touch back on that. But I appreciate you guys. You enjoy your Monday, and be blessed and be safe, and we'll see you right back here with more facts and hopefully start a bigger conversation about gun legislation and new laws to be put into effect. Have a good night and be safe. This is Brian for everybody here at Speaker Studio, and that are listening. Have a great night, and we'll see you tomorrow. Good night.